There is a place in Israel that most tourists are afraid to visit after dark. Today, it's a beautiful nature reserve called Banias, filled with waterfalls and lush greenery. But 2,000 years ago, it was known by a much darker name, the Gates of Hell. Imagine a massive, yawning cavern at the base of Mount Hermon, a cliff of solid rock that seems to bleed water from its depths. To the ancient world, this wasn't just a cave, it was a literal portal to the underworld, a place of deep black water where the light of the sun never touched the bottom. It was a site of pagan blood sacrifice, demonic legends, and a history so dark that no self-respecting Jew would ever set foot there. So here's the question that should change how you read your Bible. Out of all the holy places in Israel, the temple in Jerusalem, the quiet shores of Galilee, or the heights of Mount Tabor, why did Jesus take his disciples here? Why did he choose the most spiritually radioactive location on the planet to make his most famous announcement? Today, we're going into the pit. We're uncovering the dark history of Caesarea Philippi, the rock that isn't what you think it is, and the reason why the gates of hell are actually in a state of panic. To understand the twist, we have to understand the pit. In the time of Jesus, this area was called Caesarea Philippi, but the locals called it Banias. It was named after the Greek god Pan, the half-man, half-goat deity of the wild, famous for causing panic in the hearts of men. Archaeologists have spent decades uncovering the sanctuary of Pan right at the mouth of this cave. They found niches carved directly into the rock face where idols of goats and gods once sat staring out at the people. But the rituals were what made this place truly terrifying. Ancient historians tell us that worshippers would throw live sacrifices into the deep flooded cavern. They believed the water inside was bottomless and led directly to the abyss. If the sacrifice sank and disappeared, the gods were pleased. But if blood surfaced in the nearby springs that fed the Jordan River, it meant the underworld had rejected the offering. It was a place of fear, death, and the occult. But there's a second layer of darkness here. This cave sat at the foot of Mount Hermon. According to the ancient book of Enoch, a text the disciples would have been very familiar with, Mount Hermon was the exact location where the Watchers, the fallen angels from Genesis 6, descended to earth to corrupt humanity. To the disciples, being at Caesarea Philippi was like standing on the porch of the devil's house. They were in Gentile territory, surrounded by the stench of pagan incense and the echoes of ancient demonic legends. They must have been wondering, Lord, why are we here? This is the last place a Messiah should be. Jesus doesn't just pass through this area, he stops. He stands in the shadow of that massive limestone cliff, a literal wall of rock dedicated to the gods of the underworld. And in the middle of this spiritual graveyard, he asks the most important question in human history. Who do people say the Son of Man is? The disciples start listing the popular opinions. Some say John the Baptist, maybe he's come back from the dead. Some say Elijah or Jeremiah. These were safe answers. They were comfortable answers. Then Jesus narrows his gaze. He looks them in the eye, with the mouth of the gates of hell gaping open right behind him, and asks, "But who do you say that I am?" The silence must have been heavy. You can almost imagine the pagan worshippers in the distance, the sound of the rushing water from the cave, and the looming presence of the idols. Then Simon Peter speaks up. He doesn't just give a name, he makes a declaration of war. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Note the contrast. In a place dedicated to dead gods and the living worm of the underworld, Peter calls Jesus the Son of the living God. Now listen to Jesus' response, because this is where the translation often hides the true power of the moment. Jesus says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." For centuries, we've been taught that Jesus was pointing to Peter as the rock, but many scholars believe he was actually pointing at the massive cliff behind them, the rock of Caesarea Philippi, the literal gates of hell. He was saying, "You see this rock, this stronghold of darkness? I'm going to build my church right on top of it." But here is the biggest aha moment. When we hear "the gates of hell shall not overcome," we usually picture the church hiding behind a wall, terrified, just trying to survive until the end of the world. We think the church is on the defense. But think about what a gate is. Have you ever been chased down the street by a gate? Of course not. A gate is a defensive structure. It's meant to keep people out or keep prisoners in. By standing at the literal gates of hell and saying they won't prevail, Jesus wasn't saying the church would survive an attack. He was saying the church was going to lead the attack. He was telling his disciples, hell has built walls to keep people in bondage. Hell has locked the doors on the souls of men. But I'm building a movement that is going to smash those doors down. Hell is the one that should be afraid. Hell is the one on the defense. This 10-minute journey to Caesarea Philippi changes how we have to live today. We often spend our lives looking for safe spaces. We want to stay in our palaces, our comfortable homes, our quiet churches, our safe circles. But Jesus didn't wait for the world to come to him in the temple. He marched his followers to the darkest, most cursed spot on the map to tell the enemy, "Your time is up." The gates of hell in your life, that generational curse, that deep-seated fear, that addiction that feels like a bottomless pit, it is not an attacking force. It is a prison that Jesus has already given you the keys to unlock. If you feel like you're standing at the mouth of a cave today, remember where Jesus chose to reveal his glory. He didn't do it in the light. He did it in the shadow of the enemy's gate, because it's in the pit that the king reveals his greatest power. If this story opened your eyes to a new side of the Bible, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to bringing these pit-to-palace stories to life every single week. And if you want to know more about the dark secrets the Bible reveals, click right here to watch our special on the 4 angels buried under the Euphrates. You won't believe what's waking